Hello, 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 hello. How many? Hello, 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 hello. My brain broke there for a minute.
There's too many hellos. Shit.
Is it at least an even number of hellos? I don't want to end on an odd number.
Oh, geez.
Now we gotta start the show all over again because I don't know. It's gonna bother me. But yes, Cranked and Ranked. This is the podcast that you've stumbled upon or you're bored enough to listen to. And we do these kind of intros where who the fuck knows what's coming or what kind of show this is going to be. Could be a complete mess, but let's hope not. But thank you for joining us. As usual, your host, Old Head, with me as always, Eddie Sparxx.
That's me.
Yeah, Eddie Sparxx, who just last night. Do you have a window open?
Yeah, I'm gonna need to shut that.
You don't have to. It was just like a car went past. And we're like, oh shit, man.
Yeah, no.
I thought you lived in a rural area.
Hey man, look, this is Britain. The line between urban and rural is paper thin. Like
I expected to hear the clopping of a horse carriage.
Here's the thing, right? You are as likely to run into horse riders as you are someone doing donuts in a Subaru in the middle of the street. This is it's weird. It's like this is prime boy racer territory. So like anyone with a souped up car is going, oh look at how fucking loud my exhaust is. Bang! Bang! You know, it's like, yeah, okay, we get it. Your car is cool.
There's occasionally bangs in my neighborhood, but that's just because somebody's getting shot.
Damn, dude.
Not ever.
America. Fuck yeah.
And I'm not even really kidding. But I live in one of those neighborhoods where you hear gunfire and you hear of there being shootings, but they're always shootings where it's like two people shooting at each other or something like that, or people that are into some shady shit shooting each other. It's not like a mass shooting. I live in that bad part of town where it's actually pretty safe.
Yeah. That is wild culturally for me to, picture, the only gunshots I hear around here are hunting. That's it. And you hear it in the distance, like very far away in like wooded areas. Like, so you'll hear the old like distant like just barely hit your eardrum and you'll be like, oh, someone's out hunting. Whereas over there, like 2 blocks down, someone's popping a cap in a motherfucker.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you literally hear like those are the kind of gunshots you hear. You hear like a pop, 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 pop. And that's all you hear. And it's like, oh, that was just one dude getting whacked. That wasn't a gunfight.
That's fucking wild to me, man. Like,
which that's how it works, man. If you really want to kill somebody, that's the thing I hate about movies and TV shows is you just shoot them once in the shoulder and walk away. I'm like, no, you walk up real close, twice in the head, twice in the chest, walk away. Okay, that's how you do it.
You at least unload a third of a clip,
Yeah. But yes, yeah, those are we live in. I mean, like not just our countries, but our areas that we live in are just vastly different. But whatever.
Yeah.
I have to admit though, like my actual like street and the street surrounding me and my neighbors, like I got some cool and nice people. I know for damn sure that my neighbor carries a gun around with him. But he's a nice guy and he likes me, so it's all good. He'll be there to protect me if I need him, probably.
Yeah, you definitely want to keep the guy with a gun on your side.
Yeah. But yeah, so I'm sorry. This is I was about to say before we ever got into that, I was gonna say that I introduced you, and then I was gonna say who last night had the premiere of his new band. Sage. And so they had their first show last night. So I'm gonna say, like, if anyone's got a problem with Eddie having low energy today, just remember, like, he was living the rock and roll lifestyle last night, and so he's probably not fully recovered.
I mean, rock and roll is going out, playing a gig to a room full of hot chicks, and then packing your kit down, going home, and then working a 9-hour retail shift.
I mean, sadly, that's what it's come down to a lot of times. But yeah, I saw some footage, and it looked like you guys had a good time, and you guys played. See, when you sent me the set list of what you guys played, I was like, oh, this is like one of those shows that like the Beatles would play, where it's like you were the only band playing and you were expected to play for a long time. So you guys had originals and covers, like in different portions of the set. Whereas like any band I was ever in, your first show was literally you had time for 4 songs because you were the first band out of 5 at some bar, and you probably were playing at about 7, maybe 8.
We were. I mean, the other 2 members of the band are pretty local to the area, but when you've got friends, there is that thing of, it's all networking, it's all connections. You need, thankfully, the more writing and arrangement kind of guy, I get more time to focus on that. Whereas the other 2 have more connections and experience. And, I'm the youngest in the band. So, Stranger Things also made metalheads sexy again. So I'm enjoying that.
Not me. I think I still fall into that category where I think the beard throws everybody off, because you're either into this or this is the worst thing you could ever find.
Yeah, man. But when you find those that do, that the beard is like what is it called? Like a litmus test or whatever it is, to just like weed out the finest.
Yeah,
you're a man of quality.
Oh, I appreciate it. Speaking of that, the only critique I can give you from the stuff that you sent me about your band is we got to talk about the other 2 members' hair game. They're gonna have to grow that shit out, because I'm not gonna be able to take them seriously otherwise.
I have been saying to Shannon, dude, even if it's a wig, like just an easy E Jerry curl under that cap is gonna rock.
But no, it's great that you guys got your shit going, and that's exciting. It's exciting for me. I actually like this because I don't ever want to be in a band ever again. I got so tired of it, but now it's almost like my son started a band. I mean, you could be my son. And so I'm just real excited for, like, oh man, you guys are going to, you already have original songs. I'm just like, oh, you're going to go out and play. It's going to be fun. And it's still early on in your life where you're not jaded about it yet. And maybe you won't even get jaded. Maybe you'll get picked up and become a famous musician, and you can have that kind of life. And that would be great.
I'm just saying, it's real hard being a rock star stuck in an average Joe's body. What can I say, dude?
Yeah, come on now. You are the
I'm in a rock star body. Okay,
yeah, cool. you are the looks for sure on this podcast. Probably the brains as well. I think I'm the guy steering the ship. That's it.
Never before did I ever think in my life that I would be the math guy on a show, but I always end up whipping the calculator out. I mean,
math is strangely important. Kids, don't neglect your studies.
Or maths, as it's known over here.
Maths, yes.
Maths.
Anyway, so before we get going, I wanted to read something real quick, because occasionally I get emails. And you can email me too at oldheadpodcast@gmail.com. Or you can just comment, on a video, but for some reason it's easier for me to remember emails, because sometimes we get a lot of comments and the emails are just in my inbox and I see them. But I just thought this was an important email to read.
Cool.
You'll appreciate this. This email came from Mr. Duncan Evans, and he says, I listened to The Noose because you and Edward Sparkington Esquire made fun of it. I laughed my tits off at it. Unfortunately, it's now part of my regular playlist, and I love it. I hate you both. Regards, Duncan. So first of all,
our life breathe. Hey, from the rope, the body just twisted there.
And and so here's the thing. When he said that we made fun of it, I was like, well, I mean, I didn't really make fun of it because I actually like it. And I like it because it sounds weird.
Yeah.
And I said I wish that he did an entire. We're talking about 6 Feet Under with the vocalist Chris Barnes, who was previously in Cannibal Corpse, and a lot of people are poking fun at the fact that his vocals are nowhere near as good as they were. And he does this thing now where it's supposed to be like a higher pitch death metal thing, like he used to do, but it's just him saying the letter E. E. And I don't know why. I think things like that just like tickle me in a way that I'm just like, look, okay, I get why this is funny, but at the same time, I haven't thought about 6 Feet Under so much in years. Yeah. So
like this could end up being like this strange redemption arc where like we're giving it semi-ironic praise, which ends up being legitimate praise.
Yeah. They would have to get better at the actual music writing part in that band in order for me to really give a damn. Because honestly, I still think that if it's produced right, the way that his voice is aged, if you put some brutal music that's really interesting and produced it in a way where everything feels kind of organic, then I think it could sound cool. But yeah. But so much of the stuff that comes out, it's like so poorly produced, like it's just done on a laptop somewhere, and it just doesn't feel like something's always weird about it to me. But either way, we're not talking about poorly produced death metal. We will be talking about some poorly produced music on today's episode, but completely different side of the rock and roll spectrum. Today, we are going to be ranking the discography of Boston, who, okay, this is the funny thing. In my brain, I just went, wait, how do I not know? Are Boston actually from Boston? Is that why they're called Boston? How do I not know this? I did no research whatsoever, apparently. I mean, they say in that one song, we're just another band out of Boston. So
I mean, I would have thought so.
I'm not, sure don't even look it up. We're just going to assume that they're from Boston. Because otherwise, like, why would you name yourselves something from a place that you're not from? That's why that band called America, they nailed it. Because they're just like, hey, we definitely live there in America.
Oh, dude.
And then there's also a band called Texas, but I think they're from Ireland. So fuck those people. Anyway.
Oh, dude. I'm looking forward to this, man.
Yeah. So Boston's, I mean, I guess everyone out there, even if you haven't heard all of their albums, more than a feeling. I mean, it's
every single person on earth has heard More Than a Feeling.
You probably know,
born yet know More Than a Feeling.
Yeah. You've heard that, and probably others if you've ever listened to classic rock radio, especially in the US, because their first album, most of it is played on the radio regularly still. But yeah, so we're jumping into this discography, which is 6 albums spread out. Like they only have 2 albums that were made close together in a span of time of a couple years. Everything else has big gaps in between it. I've got some theories on why that happened on a lot of the occasions. But before we get into that, we usually talk about where the band came into our lives. And I'm pretty sure that I heard at least More Than a Feeling randomly on the radio, but my first memory of Boston is there was a commercial. I used to get up really early in the morning because I wanted to watch the USA Cartoon Express, and they would play like fucking Captain Caveman and Grape Ape and all of this different stuff.
Awesome.
And I just remember that there would be these long commercials for like wanting you to subscribe to a magazine of some sort. I don't know what magazine it would have been, but it was like, hey, if you subscribe to our magazine called, Adulting or whatever, you get this free CD of classic rock, a compilation. And in the commercial, it's all these like middle-aged white people all like singing along to some. I'm doing like a really lame sort of head nodding, like I'm listening to headphones. And yeah, and it's all like some guy going feel like making love and stuff like that. And
we
then
covered that last night as well.
nice. And then one of them was them singing along to More Than a Feeling, and I just remember that was my first hearing that song and knowing what that song was, because you see the list of songs scrolling on the TV, More Than a Feeling, Boston. And then several years later, this was when I was in high school. I went through a weird phase where big poppy anthemic rock music, I adored it. So I got really into Poison and how if the songs were big and catchy with big guitars, I'm like, oh, this is great. And so of course I ended up buying the Boston album finally, although I think I may have had it earlier in life as well as a kid. I don't really remember, but I remember the specific time where the big sounds and the high vocals and all of that shit, I was just like, this is fucking perfect. I love it. And this was in the 90s.
I was gonna say, how old were you roughly when this happened? Like your big anthemic
17
rock. 17.
Probably around 17.
So that's like 95, like mid 90s.
Yeah, would have been around 95.
Which ironically, when that music couldn't have been less popular.
I know. And that's what would happen is I would be at like a used bookstore and somebody had sold Open Up and Say Ah, and it was like, oh, I can get this album for $1. All right. And so I bought Open Up and Say Ah, and I bought Boston and all this other stuff. There was a period of time where I just wanted to hear the big rock stuff, because it was just so much fun to me, especially when it's like super catchy stuff, which is what that first Boston album is like.
Yeah.
And so ever since then, especially that first Boston album has been one of those albums that I've listened to a lot over the years, and you can't escape it because it plays in grocery stores, in department stores, on radio. Like, it's just one of those things that you just hear early Boston, like everywhere you go. But this week when we were preparing for this was actually the first time I listened to their last two albums that they did. And so that was interesting. So that brings us up to now. So for you, where did Boston? I doubt Boston is on Grand Theft Auto, or is it?
You would be very surprised, because Smokin' is
of course.
Smokin' is on the soundtrack to GTA San Andreas, on the KDST classic rock station, The Dust, hosted by Tommy the Nightmare Smith, who is actually Axl Rose playing a character.
Okay. I feel like we just talked about him recently too.
Yeah.
In another episode.
But like, I just remember there was one specific time where it was like the perfect moment where I just decided, fuck it, I'm going to steal this military helicopter and wage war on the US government. And I just decided to take the fucking helicopter, hop in it, and like the moment the blades started whirring, Smokin' came on. And as it took off, the song began to build, and I was just in all these like, I mean, I'm showing my age here, but here I am just in dogfights with other aircraft, listening to this song and thinking, I feel fucking invincible right now. and like when the song ended, I was like, that's it. My rampage is complete. Flew it back, evaded the police, all good. But I just remember that being a really special moment, because I was like, I have to get the album that song is on, because that song is just too good to me now.
I love how sometimes you tell me things and I go, maybe that's why they keep blaming video games for violent outbursts.
Well, like that's the thing though. Like, you would think something like thrash or like hip hop were like one of the more cliched quote unquote violent music genres. Here I am blowing away enemies in an Apache helicopter.
Yeah.
listening to something from one of the most radio-friendly albums of all time.
Yeah.
And but it is just such a badass song that,
Mhm.
like, I'm gonna be honest, I have broken the speed limit several times to that song. But it never in built-up areas.
Okay.
But I'm a
Good.
sensible young man.
Good to
But
know.
only
If anyone from the local police department is watching, just make sure just you hear that part. Okay, he's
Mhm.
thoughtful in his breaking of the law.
I am. But when I'm on the dual carriageway, when I know I'm not going to hit anything. But yeah, where are we at?
Shit, the way
Jack?
I've lived in Houston, Texas for a little over 2 years now, 2 years and a few months, and I've already become a Houston driver. Like I don't use my signal when changing lanes. In front
Wow.
of people. I don't. There literally, if there's a school zone, like nobody slows down in a school zone because there's no, especially where I live, there's no cops. No cops come here.
Nah.
so
Yeah.
so it's literally just I find myself being like, well, I'm gonna be slowing everybody else down if I drive safely. So I don't do that anymore.
It's like a weird social anxiety, isn't it, that you feel on the road sometimes, where you're like, I don't want to be that guy. So, like, all of a sudden you end up breaking the law and you're like, I hope no one sees this. But you're also kind of like, I also don't want to be a dick. Everybody's like kind of looking at me. Um, but, also, this isn't the only song that Boston has appeared in a GTA game, because it also, Peace of Mind, appears
Ah,
in GTA 5. So it's some pretty good.
well, shit.
It's I think, their music translates to like every situation. It just
Yeah.
makes you feel good.
And this is the way that this music is going to live on,
Yeah.
through video games and through fucking television shows, as we've recently seen with Metallica, which I am very happy for. That's the thing, is that I've always been that person that if it's one of my favorite bands and they become even more popular, I'm all just like, this is so great.
Yeah.
I love that everything's just becoming Metallica. Like, yes, because that's just
Yeah.
because it's usually online so much negativity towards Metallica, which is weird. But now it's kind of turned a corner where you have
Yeah.
half of these people just excited because of Stranger Things, and the other half of the people trying to prove that they were already fans.
Yeah.
And I'm just
I
like, all right.
like that's the thing, right? My girlfriend sent me something recently and it really put things in perspective for me. There's so many people still caught up in like the fuck posers thing. And
Yeah.
it's like no one really cares. Like no one who actually, fucks gives a shit, And right? And here's my take from it, right? Stranger Things finally has people looking at 80s metalheads and thinking, he's kind of hard. I'd bang a dude with long hair and a bullet belt, right? And all these dudes are like, "No, this is ugly people music. We're supposed to not get laid. We're supposed to play D&D and not do not reproduce." And it's like, not slagging off people that play D&D. I have to play D&D in the past, but like there is that like basement
D&D's
dwellers.
nuts.
D&D's nuts. Ha! Got him. But but yeah, I don't know. There's just these like basement dwellers that poison the well.
Well, yeah. Plus, everyone seems to forget like what a poser actually is. Like a
Mm.
poser is supposed to be somebody that pretends to like something in order to be cool. If
Mm-hmm.
these people are hearing Metallica because of Stranger Things and they like that song, they actually like it. That's not being a poser. And even if that changes these young people into deciding to get into metal and start dressing like they're metal, that's because they like it. And that's not being a poser.
Yeah.
So that the poser thing is but it's been fucked up. We've talked about it all the way back in the day. It's like, the whole Paul Bailoff thing of like, if you're into Poison, you're a poser. No, they're very honest that they're into Poison, not Poison, but whatever the band, whatever bands. Yeah. I'm just like, that's not being a poser. That's just them not liking music that you don't like, and you are a little bit too immature to handle it. And so,
Yeah, like even Gary Holt said in an interview one time, he was like, "We hated bands like Poison, but we still went to their shows because that's where all the girls were." You know, it's like,
I mean, that's kind of a cop out, but still, I would rather Gary Holt come
yeah,
out and be like, yeah, the poser thing's kind of stupid. But Gary Holt is the last person that's going to make sense when being fair to people. If you haven't noticed his whole shtick is just like, but let's find ways to like direct hate at more people. Like, it's like, do we need more merch about how you don't like the Kardashians? I understand it. Fine, whatever.
stay out of my thrash.
Yeah, it's just like, sometimes he will post things and I just want to respond and be like, you realize that you're a grown ass man, right? So
And that's the thing.
Anyway,
I love all these bands. You know, I'm not slagging these people off as individuals, but like there's a certain route I think people take thinking wise where they either go down one or the other. They become a metalhead or a music head. Now I will say my favorite genre is metal,
yeah,
ride or die. But if I like Billie Eilish, if I like Willie Nelson, if I like fucking Eminem, I'm
yeah,
allowed to like that. You know, that doesn't mean I like this any less than
yeah.
X person or Y person or Z person. And I've run out of letters going that way. So without figuring it out.
I'm with you on that. I think if there was that thing where it's like metalhead or music head, I think I'm probably right smack in the middle, because I do want my music to be heavy most of the time, but there's plenty of stuff that I hear and go, but that's the thing. It's like, you like what you like. That's the definition of not being a poser. Like what you like. Don't follow the fucking crowd. So anyway, this is totally unnecessary because there's been that whole thing of like no gatekeeping, but honestly I haven't really seen very much gatekeeping. It's mostly been people trying to prove, well, I own the original stuff on vinyl. I mean, yeah, you're also the dude that claims they didn't do anything good after the first 4 records, so your opinion is null and void. You're not actually a fan. These people are getting into it and maybe hopefully will become a fan of all the different types of things they did.
That's the thing, right? Just to close off this last little thing before
A very appropriate mug. I'm my Metallica mug for this conversation,
which is perfect because I am going to literally use a Metallica analogy. You got the people that think they sold out with Load because they went down a more rock direction. You got the people that think they sold out with the Black Album because they went down a more radio-friendly and less progressive route. You got people that think they sold out on Justice because they made a music video for one. And you got people that think they sold out on Ride the Lightning because they wrote Fade to Black.
Yeah.
If you are any of those people, Metallica is still very successful and they don't need you, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
It really is a nobody gives a shit scenario.
And I really do think the only reason why I will always talk about this is because I have no problem with somebody not liking a band. There's plenty of bands that I don't like, but the fact that the Metallica haters have to be so vocal about it, like they can't just be like, oh yeah, you like it, I don't, cool, let's go our separate ways. It's like they're mad at people for liking something.
Yeah.
And I guess it's because Metallica is popular, but like, what would you say if Slayer was that popular? You know, it's like, would you be mad that now that Slayer's being listened to by too many people? I don't. It's all none of it makes any sense because a lot of people don't think before they talk or comment on stuff.
Yeah.
I love that we've spent so much time on this Boston thing talking about other stuff, but that's how we roll, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, as we roll up on the half-hour mark, let's do this.
Finally, skip to 30 minutes in if you actually want to hear Boston. So yeah, 6 Boston albums. The last one, 2013. It's been a while since the last Boston album, and honestly, like I can't see there being any more really, because at this point the band they still tour. I still see that Boston goes on tour, but it's it's the Tom Scholz show with whoever he's hired to come along with him. Which I guess most people don't care. Most people don't care. Most people will go see Journey with a karaoke singer singing instead of Steve Perry, which is, I guess, if that's your prerogative. If it's the same thing with Skid Row. Everyone keeps posting videos of like, this new Skid Row singer sounds like Sebastian Bach. I'm like, did you hear the words that you said in there? Sebastian Bach. He has to sound like somebody else for you to think he's good. Yeah. Somebody that should be in the band. God damn it. All right. All right. Anyway, I'm done with ranting. Boston. Number what's your number 6 Boston album, Mr. Edward Spartacus? Ooh. Edward Spartacus. I'm Edward Spartacus.
I don't know, man. That feels like a lot of responsibility.
Edward Spunks.
Eddie Spunks. I mean,
oh, he does. I've heard.
Yeah. Shit. I hope we do.
We should just make this. We'll do a 2-hour episode. We never actually get around to Boston, and then next time it'll be Boston Part 2, the actual ranking. No, sorry, no, we're not going to do that to you guys.
Okay, yeah, it's cool.
Number 6.
So number 6. Now, after much deliberation, I had to kind of be a little bit objective here because I feel very similarly about my bottom 2. I think they're good. I don't think there's a bad Boston album in terms of songwriting. There's some questionable production choices on one of them, but for, originality's sake and, this one, Life, Love, and Hope, by the way, is my number 6.
Okay.
I feel that as though, this is posthumously, it features multiple singers, including the late Brad Delp, who, let's get this out of the way, tragically committed suicide in 2007. Completely tragic loss.
Probably to me, one of the most depressing suicides I've ever read about. Because, there are people that like kill themselves and you'd think, well, maybe it had something to do with their medication, or maybe it, the way that they kill themselves, maybe they didn't think it through. And if they had had more time to think about it, maybe they wouldn't have done it. I mean, there's been a lot of those, but his was so, he had to have been fully sober and knowing exactly what he was doing. So not only did he have a fucking tube running from his car exhaust into a bathroom, he brought in 2 charcoal grills and lit them both and wrote all these different notes. Like, that is a man, and that breaks my heart, because that is a man that is like, whatever had gone on with him, he was broken beyond repair. I mean, there's that part of thinking that maybe he could have been repaired, and I don't know his home life, I don't know his family life, I don't know his friends, but that's the shit that I'm just like, I can't even imagine what that feels like, to where you're that done with everything. It's awful. It's like, anyway, not to start this off on a negative note, but it's just like, that's just one of those things, especially somebody like this guy, he's just like such a great singer.
Yeah. Oh, he's immortal voice. I mean, the dude was incredible. And it's so sad to see someone so iconic, really just go out like that. I mean, but I thought, let's get this out of the way. It's a very hard thing to bring up, but at least it's done now. We can talk completely about the music. So with that,
rest in peace, Brad Delp.
Yep, Brad Delp, rest in peace. So with that, Life, Love, and Hope. To me, this album, it's disjointed a little bit because it's got so many singers on it, and I think it's cool in its own way, but it's following Brad Delp's passing, and they pieced together like a bunch of really good songs, and they definitely picked different voices to fit different things. Heaven and Earth is a really good opener. Didn't Mean to Fall in Love is a really good ballad. Now I will say Last Day of School. Now I know this is down to the title alone, and why I've associated with it. But like, it does remind me of the triumphant moment at 11 years old where I finished primary school and had like that last truly great, fully kid carefree summer, you know, before high school caused everything to go tits up. But yeah,
Yeah.
Sail Away is this big old epic song with some, you know, spoken parts in there. Life, Love, and Hope. You know, my favorite thing about Boston is that, you know, most triumphant guitar harmony stuff that is all through their albums. Like every 80s melodic rock band owes it all to Boston, and I love that it never was absent from their sound, because Tom Scholz, right? People argue that, you know, Eddie Van Halen popularized shred guitar in the 80s. That he did. But I think the sound of 80s rock began with Boston, because that whole Rockman thing that Tom Scholz invented is the sound of so many 80s rock albums, dude.
Yeah,
like that's all over albums like Hysteria, for example. Like anything with that chorusy guitar tone starts with Boston big time. And I just adore that. And the way Tom Scholz harmonies always sound, they always sound victorious, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, I reached for that fucking star and I just picked it right out of the sky. If You Were in Love, some female lead vocals from Kimberly Dame, I think it is. Dame? At least it's not Dahmer. Someday is cool. Love Got Away is this ballady track. And then, always popular on the Cranked and Ranked show, we have some re-recordings or some, you know, rearrangements. Someone 2.0. I love that Hammond organ, but it is a re-recording.
Yeah.
And You Gave Up on Love 2.0 is also, you know, it's melodic rock goodness, but it's still another re-recording.
Are these, do they seem like re-recordings or just remixes? Because sometimes it seems like they sound so similar that
I think it's a mixture of both. I think they reused Brad Delp's vocals or something. The Way You Look Tonight is a power ballady rocker. It's a cool album, and I am very likely to revisit every album on this list because I love melodic hard rock, and Boston practically did it first in the way we know it now.
Yeah.
As far as I know, you know.
Well, my number 6 is also Life, Love, and Hope from 2013.
Cool.
So I'm glad we got that out of the way, that, you know, Brad Delp, very missed, rest in peace. This album is a huge fucking mess.
It
is. I don't even know how this ever got released as an actual album. This should be called Boston Odds and Ends, or Boston Leftovers, or Boston Unfinished Tracks that were polished a little bit by somebody, kind of. That's a very long title, but there's something that happened like on the last half of their discography where it's like, well, we're going to use programmed drums, but we're not going to try to get realistic sounding drums or even mix them or produce them in a way that doesn't sound anything but completely fucking awkward, like it's a demo. And that's exactly this is literally like an album that sounds like it's unfinished demos. And the only thing that makes it a little bit enjoyable is what you're saying, the Boston guitars. But even the guitars in this album are like the smallest they've ever sounded. But they're still
pretty buried a little bit. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, oh, this is Boston, but without any of the power or classic songwriting that you would hope for. But I just don't know why anybody would listen to this finished product with the drum machine sound that's on there and go, that's all right. It's embarrassing. This is like, to me, it's like, I feel bad. It makes me feel even worse for Brad Delp, this album, because I'm just like, why did this have to be, if this is the last thing they put out, why did they have to do this? So I don't know. To be completely honest, like I know you said yourself, you'll probably go back and listen to all these albums again. I would like to not even ever talk about this album again. I don't ever want to mention it.
Yeah, for me, it's like a select few songs is what I mean. Yeah, like some have ended up in my like rotation, but
yeah, because not only did it not give me anything that I wanted when it comes to Boston, it also I'm okay if you get older. Maybe the songwriting is not as good, but at least put things together where it sounds professional. This sound. I could have made this album if I could play guitar like Tom Scholz. I could have made this album because it's just so a hodgepodge of like I don't even know. It's baffling to me. But what makes it even worse is that this being the last album that they did, it's just all I kept thinking, while listening to this, and then thinking of it in the context of, okay, we're ranking these albums, and I'm ranking this along with the 1976 debut album. I kept thinking, man, this is like the most sobering reminder that eventually everyone is going to have to say, all right, it's over. and that is what this album sounds like to me. It sounds like somebody that should have just said, oh, we're done. Like once Brad Delp killed himself, I think that they should have just hung it up. And I say they, I mean, Tom should have hung it up.
Or maybe done a different project, maybe.
Yeah. Or like I said, put together a really big, take these songs that maybe didn't quite get finished and put them with other odds and ends and put out a big compilation so then you're listening to it with different ears because you're like, oh, there's the Boston legacy, and then here are some other things that you can listen to. But this is presented as a legit album, which to me is very rude and kind of annoying. So my number 6, what was it even called? Life, Love. Also that title, Life, Love, and Hope, which is funny because one of my favorite albums is called Faith, Love, and Hope by Faith, Hope, and Love by King's X. A fucking monumentally great album. And this one is just like, okay.
It does have a distinctly live, laugh, love vibe to it, doesn't it?
I do think that like this album is literally for, I mean, if you're listening to this, if you're a massive Boston fan, like if Boston is your favorite band of all time, then I could understand there being enjoyable qualities to this. But as just a regular guy who's just a big fan of a couple of their albums, maybe 3, let's just say that I ended up doing my ranking in the correct order, and I'll get to that. But yeah, when listening to this one, I was just like, I can't find anything really redeeming about this, because even the guitar parts, if you listen, starting on album 2 with Boston, Tom's already repeating himself. He literally, every album is it's always the same kind of shit, done very well. There's some different kinds of shit here and there, but if you listen, he's really good at doing this narrow kind of thing, and it just kind of gets done. And every time it gets done, it's like doing a photocopy over and over and over again, where eventually you're like, that looks kind of like the original, but it's hard to make it out. And then so you're on this album now where all of a sudden it's been copied so many times that you're just like, I don't even want to bother looking at this because it's hard to see. So all right, anyway. Moving on to number 5.
Cool. So I'm going to hazard a guess we may have the same number 5. If what you said about that one was anything to go by.
Probably.
My number 5.
Do you want to do a countdown and see if we do the same name?
Yeah.
All right, you count down.
3, 2, 1.
Corporate America.
Yep.
From 2002. So yeah, mind you, this is how many years passed by. 2013, and then all the way back 2002. And this was that's the longest gap. So that's before we even get started with this album, that's another thing that pisses me off. If you've got 10 years to make an album and you're still doing kind of the similar shit, like that's why, like, I really do think we're going to get to the end of this episode and you're going to hear my demeanor change a lot, because there's a couple albums at least that I love so much, but I would be lying if I didn't say Tom Scholz did not quite have all the fuel in the tank that everybody expected him to have. And I feel like that's a big reason, among other things, a big reason why it took so long to make albums. And then even when you get the album, you're like, this is kind of nothing interesting. And I think it's because he really did have this. We talked about with Nine Inch Nails. Trent Reznor has a really big palette that he paints with, but he hasn't strayed from that palette. Tom Scholz's palette is really small, and he just picks from these things over and over again, and then paints something that is very pleasing. But he doesn't have very many places to go. So
it's like,
there you go.
What are you gonna paint today, Tom? I'm gonna paint a spaceship shaped like a guitar.
Only this time it's going to be slightly further away and maybe to the left.
Oh, dude,
that's Boston in a nutshell.
That's the thing, though. Like Tom Scholz, like I say, Tom Scholz guitar. I love what he does so much that I will admit there is the Tom Scholz thing.
Yeah,
and he does the Tom Scholz thing, but I love that so much that he gets a kind of a free pass from me.
Oh, that, but like, I'm just one of those dudes that I get really picky, because I understand, like, there are people that are huge fans of AC/DC or Motorhead or bands that literally did the same kind of thing for 30 plus years. And I understand that. If you love it so much, it doesn't fucking matter. I'm just one of those weirdos that likes things to a point, and then I expect there to be something different, even a little bit. So, or some sort of step in a different direction. It doesn't matter what it is.
I'd probably also, preface this by saying I'm more into the melodic hard rock stuff than you are. I know you like it.
Some of it, yeah.
I'm very deep in there. So, like,
oh, I know. You send me some obscure shit with some big ass keyboards, and I'm just like, man.
Yeah. What was the one recently? Rock and Roll Casualty by Tobruk. Fucking killer.
Oh yeah,
song. Yeah.
There's something to be said when the keyboard is the part that you're like, turn it down. The keyboard is overpowering the big ass rock guitars.
Hell, man, like, you gotta have those big old icy synths, man.
I have to admit, I love those. It's just with a lot of those bands, the thing that ends up turning me off is sometimes it's just the vocalist. That I kind of, sometimes I want there to be a lot more power in a voice, and sometimes it's just not there with those bands. But there are some.
When in doubt, reverb knob, right the way up.
Yeah,
and you gotta hit in Canada in '86. But So what we got here? Corporate America. So I had a good time. Is a nice song, nice happy opener. Stare out your window. Can't help but feel a little bit of a Wonderwall vibe on that song. Also, the pre-chorus sounds a lot like the iCarly theme song, and I couldn't take my mind off it the entire time.
Now I'm glad I don't know that theme song.
Oh, dude! Once you hear it, you can't unhear it. I kind of went into that song cursed from the start, because I was like, this just sounds like Miranda Cosgrove singing the iCarly tune over the top of Wonderwall.
I hate it when stuff like that ruins songs. For some reason, that immediately made me think of there's a song by Audio Slave, and the way that the song starts out, it's literally just "Don't You Forget About Me" from the Breakfast Club movie.
Yeah.
So the song starts, and it's and I'm all like, hey. Oh, wait, this is not the song. All right. So, like, I don't even know what the rest of that song sounds like. I'm sure it's great, but I can't get past, like, come on, guys. When you put that together, you didn't hear that? Like, that's an iconic song. Anyway.
Oh, dude. So yeah,
iCarly.
iCarly. Episode 1. Uh, Corporate America. I find it interesting how they somehow got more 80s after the 80s had long ended. Like this has a distinctly almost new wave edge to it.
So
Like
I want to camp out on this song because Corporate America is literally the only song on the album I liked.
right.
Because the fact that they leaned so much, because it once again, it sounds like programmed drums again, poorly programmed drums. But the fact that they just leaned right into it and made this electronic song, and it's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm just like, and you know for sure the old school Boston fans, that's the song they hate on this album.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, give me a whole fucking album of this, Tom. Come on.
I mean, I thought it was like really, it was probably the most different thing I'd heard, really.
Yeah.
But then you get With You, got to have some acoustic stuff in there. Someone, love this, really cool song. Turn It Off is a cool, dirty, alt-tinged rock track. Again, like that's a slightly different sounding thing. It's like, oh, where's he headed?
Sure.
But it also feels like in 2002 he kind of did that 6 years too late already. Crying is some more balladry. Didn't Mean to Fall in Love has a strong Toto vibe. Love that. I do like me some AOR goodness. And then you get Gave Up on Love. Great song. I think that this album could have been better if the production quality was higher, because I think there's a lot of really good songwriting, but
and the guitars sound pretty big on this album too.
Yeah. So like that's the thing. It is that thing of, I don't think they ever made a horrendous album. I will admit, Life, Love, and Hope is messy as shit, but
yeah,
there are songs on it I enjoy. But Corporate America at least feels consistent. And so with that, I'm handing it over to you to wrap up this one.
Yeah, I feel like this one is yeah, if a better production could have helped it. Also, like, it's so weird to me that I don't know enough about the history of the band to know exactly what was going on between the two of them, but the fact that Brad Delp was back, but not really. Like, he's just on 4 songs. And the other singer is fine. I mean, everyone they've had sing on their stuff is fine. But overall, I think the reason why this album doesn't work for me is that I feel like it became, and this makes sense. So it's one of those duh kind of observations, but this feels more like rock made by and for people who are listening to it on their way to go play golf.
Okay, yeah.
And
I hear
and
it.
so, and I just think that yeah, I mean, at this point, if you look at the history of the band, it's just the Tom Scholz project, because it was the only constant members through the first 3 albums were him and Brad, and then Brad left, and then from then on, it's just been who's going to be here, who's going to play, and so the problem with the problem with that here is that, you know, you start seeing very quickly that they start getting other songwriters involved. And even those songs, they feel like they were probably just leftovers by those other songwriters, because none of them are very memorable songs, which I realize this is unfair, because trying to compete with just the first album alone is a very daunting task to have to deal with. So I get it. But ranking these albums together, like, this album is not horrible. It had things about it that I liked, but I have to admit, I probably won't listen to it again, except for probably the song Corporate America, because I thought it was cool. But I just think at a certain point, I think Tom Scholz needed a band. He needed a band of people to work with, because I feel like even though he's working with other songwriters, the vibe that I get from everything that happened since, maybe album 3 on, is that he's probably way too much in control and needs other people to go, we could probably do that better, or this song could be better, or maybe we shouldn't do that same thing that we've already done on 3 albums. And so you get to 2002 corporate America, and the albums are, like I said, so much time passes between these albums that you would expect there to be a lot more to sink your teeth into, and there's really not. But luckily, let me just get this out of the way. I listened to these albums backwards, and
Right.
And that is if you're going to listen to the Boston discography, that is the way to do it, because things get better. and you're just like, and so so that we can just move on. We can walk on at this point, because I'm all like, what is that? The next time we're talking about to our number 4 Boston album, because as we move on, I'm going to have more things to like, because I really do think Boston is a band that needs to be praised, and all I'm doing is just talking about all these shortcomings, and I'm ready to move. I'm ready to get on to that part.
Cool. So, in a shocking turn of events, my number 4, the only album on this list released in the 80s, is in the bottom half of my ranking. My number 4 is Third Stage.
All right. Okay.
So 8 years following their sophomore release, Boston returned in 1986 with Third Stage. I believe that the production of it took 8 years was because like a flood happened and fucked his studio up completely.
Well, also, I think there was disputes with their label, and then they left and moved to a different label. It was a lot of different things.
Yeah. So, I mean, still 8 years. That's pretty intense, considering that, they had such a hit with their debut, and then just 2 years later put out Don't Look Back, which, still sold, but not nearly as much. But, they could have had like a 2 album a year trajectory where they just took over the fucking earth.
But I really do think that there just wasn't enough in the tank to do that. But when this album came out, when Third Stage came out, it was huge. And I only remember that because my oldest brother, who rarely talked about music, was all over the new Boston album. And I'm like, oh, wow. Shit, if my older brother is excited about this album, then it must be fucking huge.
I mean, my issues with this album are solely on I would say the reliance on there being maybe one too many ballads.
It's mostly ballads, this album, isn't it?
Yeah. Like, here's the thing. You listen to like their first 2 albums, and it's a pretty healthy mixture of both. Whereas on this one, there's a lot of ballads and a lot of interludes. So there's probably only like 2 or 3 actual rock songs on here.
Rock.
Yeah.
It's almost genre. Like, because even back in the first 2 albums, they'll have soft parts, but it's going somewhere big. But now it's like the big parts have gotten smaller. It's like,
so we took all the rockin' shit and condensed it down to a 36-second interlude, which is a really fucking cool 36-second interlude. But I'll get to that. Right. So this album obviously is intended to be listened to as an album, because there's a lot of parts in it that are very interlude-y and kind of lead into one another.
I'd say their first 4 albums feel like they're supposed to be listened to in a certain sequence.
Yeah. Same goes for Walk On. There's like 4 tracks on that one that
go together,
make up one thing.
Yeah.
But so Amanda, it's a bold move to start a rock album with a power ballad, dude.
And the sad thing about this album is that it's the best ballad on the album, and they blow their wad like right away.
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of comical. Actually, if you go over to let's have a look. Let's consult Spotify real quick.
While he's doing that, I'll sing Amanda. I'm gonna take you by surprise and make you realize, Amanda. That's it.
Very nice. I was just gonna say, right, here is the shocking plays statistic of Amanda versus the rest of the album. You ready?
Okay.
Right. Amanda is 67,211,892 plays.
Just on Spotify.
Just on Spotify as of Sunday, 10th of July, 2022.
Okay.
The following track, We're Ready, is 3,841,509. And let's put it this way. Cool the Engines is the second highest played song, and it's not even 10% of what Amanda is. So that thing of shooting your load real fucking quick, like, I think this album's it has a really strong ending few songs, but I'm gonna get to that. So
I mean, it really does help whenever, because that's the thing that people have stopped doing that I think that everyone needs to get back on board with, is that you need to write a huge ass sweet ballad and name it somebody's name, especially a name that a shitload of people have, because then it's going to be like
they're singing about me.
And every dude that's starting to fall in love with a girl named Amanda is putting that song on a playlist or maybe listening to it a bunch of times in a row. It's like that's like songwriting 101 right there. It's like, are you going to write a big ass ballad? Why not just name it some girl's name? just do it. Come on. What would be what's a popular girl's name today? Miley. I don't know. I have no idea.
Damn. That's a hard question. I will say that, you know, I know it's not a girl, but I knew a lot of Connors growing up.
Yeah. there aren't very many romantic songs with a guy's name in it. It's like there should be. Maybe that's something that should happen.
Hell yeah. I'll write it from the perspective of a girl. And I'll have an alter ego. I'll do a Chris Gaines where I'll like put on one of those like fake breasts things, and I don't know. I'm just trying to piece together a joke.
All of a sudden, you know that there are people listening to this that are just going to be like, Eddie, come on. Okay, now you need to do this.
Yeah. Why are we not funding this project? But yeah, so We're Ready does kick us into more of a rocking thing, sensing some Rush influence a little bit.
That is an insane 1-2 punch on the beginning of this album. We're Ready is a big ass song.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden you get into the like interlude zone where you get, okay, here we go, because this is a complete mouthful. You ready? The launch. A, countdown. B, ignition. C, third stage separation. Yeah. That was a mouthful, but yeah, it's a really cool instrumental thing. Yeah. Love it.
And then they could have just cut the album right there.
Just like a 3-track EP. That's like you do three killer songs and go, I don't have to play anything else.
Yeah.
I'll rock your socks off. But then you get Cool the Engines though, which is some real cool riffing stuff.
Yeah, I'd say it's fun.
Yeah, but then immediately following it up, you get full on My Destination, proper AOR ballad here. It's not very long.
Okay, but I have something to say about that song though. Does it ever bother you when vocal melodies are repeated in other songs when it's clearly they weren't intended to be?
I was waiting for you to bring this up because I thought I was insane. It's the and that's like, so that's not a mistake. That is a very distinct vocal melody that's in Amanda and in My Destination, only just in different keys. And I'm all like, you could, because it's an album that plays in sort of a sequence, they could come out and be like, oh, it was intentional. But I'm all like, was it really? I mean, I suppose you could make an argument for it if, like, you look at the album as an overarching concept, but like, I don't know if it is or not. Like, it has things that would point to that, you know?
They're both
Like,
ballads.
yeah, you know, it's like we're ready, the launch, cool the engines, my destination, a new world, which is some of the most epic 36 seconds of music I've ever heard. That shit
Yeah.
fucking rules. I just wish that it was longer than 36 fucking seconds before they go into another ballad, you know?
Also going back to the vocal melody thing, I realize every time I start talking about things like that, I have to remind myself that most people don't care.
Yeah.
You can literally I've found that out recently when in my review of that new Megadeth song. All these people are like, I love it when they play that same riff over and over in all sorts of songs. It's the thrash riff, man. And I'm just like, well, I guess it's good that you have really low standards, because then you'll be okay with whatever.
I will say though, the riff at the end of that new Megadeth song.
Oh, well, that's a different story.
Nice. Yeah. But like, like that was really cool. But
for some reason, like repeating vocal melodies always kind of bums me out. There's a totally different thing altogether. But there's a Psychedelic Furs album where he does the same vocal melody in two different songs, and I'm all like, did he not hear that it's because it's unfortunate that it is the vocal melody from Love My Way, a fucking iconic song, and then that vocal melody is in a different song, and I go, oh man.
Okay, so while we're on this subject, I have to ask you, does it bug you that Chuck Mosley sings the same section of lyrics twice on Introduce Yourself?
About teaching your cousin to fart or whatever?
Yeah. Well, in one he says teach your cousin to fart, and one he says teach your cousin to walk. And one's in Chinese arithmetic and the other is in R&R. Yeah. But yeah, apparently that was literally down to him just rushing the lyrics out, and he was like, fuck it, using them both.
yeah. That is a thing, but coming from somebody like him, for some reason it doesn't bother me, because he's not purporting to be a crafted, skillful songwriter or whatever, you know.
I mean, I suppose that was also part of the Mosley vibe, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, he literally he could have been the fucking Wesley Willis of music, where Wesley Willis. If you know who Wesley Willis is,
I may recognize.
So you may know, because you may have heard a song called Rock and Roll McDonald's. Have you ever heard that song?
Rock and Roll McDonald's. Yeah.
So Wesley Willis was this guy. I actually saw him in concert, and it was just him and a keyboard. And he did entire albums with the same pre-recorded keyboard thing. So every song would start off do 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 don 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 don, and he would start talking about something. So in Rock and Roll McDonald's, he's like, McDonald's is the place to rock, and then the chorus is Rock and Roll McDonald's. But then he would have a song, and this song is called Courtney Love, and it would go do 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 don don. Courtney Love is in the band Hole, and he talks for a little bit, and then he goes Courtney Love, Courtney, and that's every song, and then every single song ends with a commercial, but he always starts it off with the phrase "Rock over London, rock on Chicago." So the song will be ending, and it'll go "Rock over London, rock on Chicago, Burger King, it's your way right away," and that's the end of the song. And he's and literally, and when I saw him in concert, this was in the '90s. He did a string of songs. They were all called "Suck a Different Animal's Dick." So like, this song's called "Suck a Rhino's Dick." This next one's called "Suck a Llama's Dick." And then he sometimes he would hit the wrong pre-recorded thing on the keyboard, and he would stop and he'd go, "That was just a rock and roll test." And then he would and it was just literally packed full of people watching this guy that clearly had some sort of mental issues going on. He unfortunately he passed away. He did have like schizophrenia and some other stuff. And I know that some people went and they were laughing at him, but I, for some reason, was fascinated. I'm just like, how is this so fun that I just want to hear him do all sorts of songs? I don't care what the song is about. And eventually he actually got a band together and did like different types of stuff too. Everyone go out and listen to Wesley Willis but I just love the fact that existed. and he had a record. He had a record deal, and he toured, and he did paintings and stuff too. But how do we get on Wesley Willis? I just the guy ruled. He was awesome.
Oh, man, I gotta do a deep dive. I gotta do a deep dive now.
There's probably a Wesley Willis greatest hits, or I don't know if Spotify does the same thing that Apple Music does, where it's like the essentials of an artist as a playlist that they curated. There's probably something like that.
They'll do one that'll say like, this is like Adele, or this is Metallica, or not sure why I thought of Adele, but we're on the Boston podcast.
That's okay. Adele is a very popular artist. I mean, and she starts the alphabet in the letter A. So there you go.
That was methodical thinking.
Where were we? That was a really fun tangent, but I don't remember where we were. You're still on. You just got into that short ass instrumental.
Yeah, I was just saying that was a really awesome 36 seconds of music I've ever heard. That, and we have another ballad with "To Be a Man." That's what kind of pushed it down another step for me. It was like it's a little too ballad heavy. I like a max of 2 to 3 ballads on a rock album. Yeah. I think Skid Row, "Slave to the Grind" is like the max ballad to riffage you can have.
Yeah.
All the fucking rockers on that rule, and all of the ballads on it are tearjerkers.
It's so funny that people often point at that album like, this album's so heavy. I'm all like, did you really listen to the first few songs? Because it gets very ballady.
Yeah. But yeah, I actually re-listened to that the other day, and
that's fucking killer album.
Yeah,
we gotta do Skid Row at some point, just so I can talk shit about Skid Row without Sebastian Bach, and then praise all of the earlier albums. I'm fully aware that Sebastian Bach wasn't the songwriter, and it was the whole band that was kicking ass at that point. But sometimes you just need that one wild card in your band with an amazing voice in order to make everything work.
Let me hear you wild. Sorry, I had to do the intro to the solo of.
It's a great solo.
Youth Gone Wild. It is. Back to Boston, third stage. I'm in the last
focus.
Right. I think I like it, but like this one here is a damn good rocker. I feel the ratio's a little out. Can't you say? Okay, here we go. I get to do the bracket shit. Okay. Can't you say you believe in me? / Still in love. The Boston
There's way too much going on in that song title.
Yeah, I mean, there was even an apostrophe in the "can't you," man. Like, holy shit, that really pushed the limits of my podcasting abilities right there. So I mean, the Boston sound here is still going very strong, and then Holly Ann closing out on one more ballad. So in counting, let's have a look here. Amanda, My Destination, To Be a Man, Holly Ann. That's 4 ballads.
Too many.
Right? Yeah. I could maybe excuse 2. Ideally, on an album where there's not many rockers, 1 would have been better. I would have preferred, like, how long is this album? How long is third stage?
35 minutes, 40 minutes?
Let's have a look here. Let's consult the old Wikipedia. And yeah, 36. I would have happily had it been, I would have preferred if they'd fleshed out the interludes a little bit more.
Yeah.
And, had them, even if they were instrumental, have them be these epic compositions, but like when you get something that's like 36 seconds long, I'm kind of like, man, could you not just have, that's basically a fucking intro to the next song that you've just assigned a track number. That being said, third stage is still cool, and it still has the Boston guitar harmonies, albeit in a much softer sense. With that, back over to you for your number 4 before we get on to the top 3.
I'll be quick because I feel like there's been tangents galore here. My number 4 is Walk On from 1994. Clearly, I'm going backwards in the albums here.
Cool.
The only album that's completely Fran Cosmo on vocals, who's a perfectly fine singer. He's no Brad Delp, but he's good. He's a good singer. My first note says Walk On has to be the most not 1994 sounding album ever.
Dude, yes, I said the same shit in my notes. Like, I was thinking that the whole time. I thought you could play this to me, a seasoned 80s production enthusiast,
Yeah.
and I would not have been able to tell you that was any later than 1991.
Yeah.
Like, holy fucking shit.
I would even accept 1992 because you had like Adrenalize come out in 92, and that was very not 90s sounding.
Yeah, but like, even so, this is very not 90s sounding, you know? This is late 80s levels.
Once again, it sounds like it's programmed drums throughout this album. When you look, there's a drummer credited, but I'm all like, okay, yeah, there's a drummer. Whoever you are, I apologize, but your shit was whittled down to sounding like a fucking programmed drum machine. All that work you did. So my biggest problem with Walk On is the fact that overall it doesn't sound like a rock band. That's the thing that makes me love the albums that I love from Boston, is the fact that they did these big old songs, beautiful compositions, some of the best songs like ever made, but it always ended up sounding like dudes playing in a rock band. Whereas eventually, once you get to Walk On, I kind of get the feeling that Tom kind of wanted to morph into like a Def Leppard, but he ended up doing this in 1994 when even Def Leppard wasn't trying to be Def Leppard. So, I mean, it's an interesting sound.
It's funny though. I think me and the dog cut you off there.
Yeah, there's apparently they're being let outside and they get very excited when it's time to go outside.
Yeah, I was just going to chime in. I think the production of this album took place between 1990 all the way up to 93.
It makes sense.
That explains a lot mix wise, because it is not a 1994 album.
I always hear albums like this, and it just reminds me of like somebody being shut up in a bunker, compiling an album, and they started in 1990, and then they opened the door in 1994, and they're like, "Hey, why does everybody look weird? What's with all the flannel?"
Yeah. Why is everybody's hair straight now? What?
This is weird. Also, I see a lot of short hair. What's going on with that? So anyway, the last album I talked about, I said this is music that people would listen to on the way to the golf course. Walk On is an album that sounds to me like an album for dudes that used to be rockers, but now they're tax attorneys, and this is their rock and roll. They still know how to rock and roll. Last night I went to a concert. I was out until 10:30.
Whoa!
And I had at least 2 martinis
on a school night.
So it's not very powerful stuff. It's got some good songs, but overall, comparing it to other Boston stuff, the classic Boston stuff, it's pretty weak. Now, the one thing I do really like, I do like the Walk On, Get Organized, Walk On Some More section, because it's pretty fun. It's pretty fun. And once again, I like the idea of creating an album and it's intended to be heard in this order. When you do things like that, it's like you're pointing at people and being like, listen to this in this order, because otherwise the song gets cut off or whatever. And I like that. But that section is probably, one of the few things on the album I would find myself going back to again. And it doesn't help that like the songwriting, like I said, the songwriting suffers from I just don't think that there was enough inspiration going on. And so there are other songwriters on this as well, but I just feel, I really do just feel like Boston peaked right away. And then it was just downhill from there. And
debut syndrome.
But here's the thing: I can't talk shit because if the only thing I ever did in my life was that first Boston album,
you have fuck all to prove at that point, you know?
Yeah, which is why like I'm not mad at all that there's still a band that people want to go out and see in concert, because I'm just like, I don't think they've done anything of a high level of quality since the 80s, but the strength of the shit that was really fucking good is to a point where I'm just like, I get why this shit lives on with people so much. Walk On, unfortunately, is an album where nothing lives on. And it just, it got to the point with some of these albums where I was just trying really hard to find things about it that I liked. And with Walk On, it was like there were more things that I liked about it. But, you can't, when you're ranking these things, I can't separate myself from iconic things and things that I would consider perfect. We're going to get to that. And then I hear Walk On and I go, it's got things on it that I enjoy because I enjoy the Boston sound, but it's clear that, the best days were behind them. And it's unfortunate. But now we're going to get with my top three. We're getting to where most of what I have to say is going to be pretty damn positive.
Cool. Okay, so I want it duly noted that there is a reason that as to why I have ranked it this way. So I actually like that album, Walk On, quite a bit more than you.
Okay.
And I remembered something you said in the past about a certain couple of albums and how one didn't really change much from the next. And I gave it some real thought, and I really saw the albums I'm talking about are Load and Reload, by the way. You like Load a lot more than you like Reload, because Reload was just another Load. Like there's not a lot of vibe differentiation. They're from essentially the same session.
I mean they even named it Reload. It's not like they chose a totally different name and cover style.
Yeah. So here's my thing. My number 3 is Don't Look Back.
Okay.
And it didn't sell nearly as much as its predecessor, but like the Boston vibe from the previous album, sonically is still there. It's practically, I mean, to be fair, you could, had I not known, put both their first albums in front of me and told me it's a double album, and I would believe you.
Yeah.
Because
there's a lot of similarities.
Very similar sonic qualities to these. Yeah. Now, I will say there are moments on it where I think, I haven't heard that quite yet. But a lot of it is very much a slightly less revered version of what they did the first time around. Mm-hmm. So Don't Look Back, love this song. Great opener. The guitar melodies are like especially awesome as ever. Like all of those, they're just so soaring and cool.
Yeah.
The Journey is a bit of a sci-fi interlude going into It's Easy, which is a rocking track, very dynamic. The vocals are ace. A Man I'll Never Be is a big old power ballady track. Feeling Satisfied, I love the part with the hand claps and the reverb heavy vocals where all like there's so much space, like ooh, like that part.
Feeling Satisfied, I've several times in my life referred to it as the feel good song of forever, because it's like it's never not something that's going to put me in a good mood. Everything about it, it's just even though there's like a little bit of a template thing going on with like Long Time with the hand claps and it's like I was like, they let's do a similar song. Only I think that Feeling Satisfied is like one of their best songs. I just love that's just like the Boston sound for me right there, with just big ass memorable choruses, memorable guitar melodies,
Yeah.
and just an overall vibe of like fucking rock, a fucking 70s rock and roll party, man.
Hell yeah,
You know?
man. Speaking of party, we got the song Party,
Yeah.
and it does what it says on the tin.
It absolutely.
Used to Bad News is one of the softer tracks. I love me some Boston organ licks. Like the organ, we haven't really brought up yet, but particularly on the earlier stuff, like there were organ solo moments, and
That's one of the
so
features that I
good.
love about the first couple albums.
Yeah, and Don't Be Afraid is just one last great rock and roller. Now I will say, I'm staying true to my, you know, I have this certain, I wouldn't necessarily call it a bias or even a guilty pleasure. I just simply like the way it sounds, that I've ended up with Walk On higher than Don't Look
Yeah.
Back.
Okay.
But it's pretty clear the trajectory here on in where my ranking is going to go. But I'll get to that in a second. What's your number 3?
So my number
As if
3,
I have to wonder.
so not the thing is, like, Walk On being high is interesting to me, but not as interesting as like my number 3 is Third Stage from 1986. I, for a second while listening to this, I go, this might be Eddie's number 1. I just thought,
yeah,
I thought so much about it. I went like, this could be maybe number 2. But no, not even.
There's parts on it where I thought that's one of the coolest things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's just none of those parts were fleshed out into a full song. Like they were just little parts.
Yeah, I could see that. So yeah. So this one was, 8 years after the second album. And we talked about a lot of this already. The big thing with this is it's a lighter affair overall. I think it's still a very enjoyable album. It's got some big rock qualities, which I like, but just not enough of them. And it's got some programmed drums on it, but they're produced in a way that not only sounds very appropriate for 1986, but it's also done like a goddamn professional recording. And so it sounds good. So every time I've listened to this album, I the thing that's always the names that have always gone into my head, you get to a certain point in the album where it gets ballad heavy, and I go, oh, just so on the last album I talked about, I said, oh, maybe they were trying to go for a Def Leppard thing. On this one, I was like, are they going for a Journey or REO Speedwagon thing on this album?
Yeah.
Because at that point, like Journey and REO Speedwagon were both bands that started off different than they became, but became well known for big old ballads. And I was like, oh, okay. Third Stage is the REO Speedwagon of Boston albums, I guess. But it's not necessarily a bad thing, because I think even the soft rockers on this, they have a nice vibe going for them. They're not all winners, but overall it's a good time. And when I come to Boston, I just want a good time. Don't ruin my good time with shitty production and shit like that. But in hindsight though, like, the things that I don't like about this album, when I think in my head, what was going on in 1986, I go, yeah, I guess for this band, this album feels appropriate. It makes absolute sense for this band to make this album in 1986, and it was successful for them. It was a bit. I mean, like you said, Amanda is a fucking huge song for them, and yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add. Third Stage is a good album. But even though you point out that their first and second albums have a lot of similar qualities, those are qualities that I love and I just I miss them on the later albums, and so that's why my number 1 and 2 are, if you're paying attention, what they are, and you probably know what order they're in too. So let's go ahead and move over to your number 2.
Cool. So my number 2 is Walk On. and it's a recent love. I mean, to be fair, Walk On and Don't Look Back could swap on any day of the week, depending on whether or not I'm in the mood for more of a 70s or an 80s vibe. But I felt like I would give this album some love because it's quite a recent discovery of mine, and I
Yeah.
was really pleasantly surprised by it. Like, because I can't believe that this album is from 1994. It's only 45 minutes long, and it's got a very late 80s mix. Like, this is the antithesis of 1994.
Yeah.
I thought, I thought the last thing that sounded full on 80s was Adrenalized by Def Leppard, but
It probably would also, make sense that this was the album. The year after this album came out is when I would start working my first job at Best Buy in the music department. And when you would go to the back room where there would be the overstock of stuff that we couldn't get rid of, there were boxes and boxes and boxes of Walk On in the back,
really,
that had not been sold. They were just back there. I don't know why they didn't send them back, but there was always like these albums that I guess they expected to be huge and they weren't, and then there was always just boxes of them in the back room.
Damn. Yeah. Well, I'm gonna jump into why I really like it. So, I Need Your Love, amazing song. Chorus gives me big Toto vibes, and any long-time listener knows I love me some of that Toto-esque goodness. Surrender to Me, I like it, very enjoyable.
So are you into the Fran Cosmo thing?
Yeah, I really like his voice.
Yeah.
Obviously he's not Brad Delp.
Yeah.
But this is Boston doing a different thing. It's not 70s Boston. It's 80s Boston
in the 90s.
In the 90s. Yeah. It's this weird thing where it's like, part of me is like, this is what I wish Third Stage had been in a way.
Yeah.
Because there's a better rocker to ballad ratio, Walking at Night, badass crossroads style solo spot, which leads into Walk On, which fuck yeah, some boogie rock, which is reminiscent of their early works, just done with a more 80s in the 90s production. Then that immediately leads directly into Get Organized / Get Reorganized. Make that a double fuck yeah. And then you get Walk On some more. Guys, do we have the first ever quadruple continuous fuck yeah in Cranked and Ranked history? I think we do. So if anything is from this album is notable, fuck yeah, fuck yeah, fuck yeah, fuck
I mean,
yeah,
it's a great section of the album. Plus, like I said, I love the is it a Hammond organ? Is that what that is?
That is a Hammond organ.
I love those solos.
Yeah. What's Your Name? I really like What's Your Name. My only real critique of this album is that Magdalene, which is a big old ballad, is immediately followed by We Can Make It, which is a closing ballad. Like, that's the thing. It's almost like they were like, well, one of these is going to close the record. And they were like, no, both.
Two of them, yeah.
Yeah. This is getting out of hand. No, there are two of them. But yeah, I really liked it. Whether or not Don't Look Back could climb back up to my number 2 spot is entirely down to how the passage of time treats this list. Like I say, I enjoyed every album to some extent on this list. And I'm gonna let you do your quite obvious number 2 before we get to our number 1.
Number 2, yeah, Don't Look Back from 1978. I think my ranking is solid, and as you all have now seen, it's literally backwards. It was in the order so they literally got worse every album they put out. But Don't Look Back is not like I think that this album, because obviously it came out the year I was born, so I didn't hear it back then. But when I did finally hear it, it hit me in a different way. So if I had been like, teens or older in 1978, maybe I would have looked at this as it's kind of more of the same. But when I was getting into Boston, I was like, man, I wish there was an album with more of this on it. And, and there is.
Yeah.
It's called Don't Look Back. And the weird thing about this album is that, it's said that Tom Schultz said the label pushed them to release it and they didn't think it was ready. They think it needed more songs. But it's 34 minutes, which is perfect for me. And I don't know. I think what's on it is good. I don't know if they could have necessarily topped it. Maybe they could have, which is a big thing I love about the first album. Maybe they could have put kind of an odd instrumental like Foreplay. Because the thing is, Foreplay on the first album, there's never a song like that ever again. With that weird kind of like do 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 do, it's almost like a jazzy bass line kind of thing with the piano over it. That never happened again. Almost proggy a little bit. And so maybe if they had put something like that, an interlude, a proggy interlude, or something on here, maybe that's what this album could use. But
I always hear. Sorry, I was just gonna say in Foreplay. I always hear this. What's that Megadeth album that starts off exactly like Foreplay? Now hear me out. Dialectic Chaos from Endgame. Bow, 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 down, down, down.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I never thought of that.
That's a weird connection.
That's Endgame, yeah.
But yeah, what were you saying before I derailed it with some Mustaine?
That's what we do. We derail things around here. It's really like whenever I listen to this album or really any of their albums, and I've said it already, it's got to be a nightmare to try to follow up that first album, because not only was it huge, but to me it's an album that is still a perfect album. This one's a really good one. It's a solid attempt at following it up. There is a little bit of repeating themselves in this album, but as we would find out, that's kind of the thing that they did. They just sort of repeated themes and styles of songs they had already done before to a lesser extent.
I will say, in terms of album art, it's my favorite. I think the album art on Don't Look Back is the coolest album cover of the lot.
Do you know what the thing that's shocking to me is that I went to go grab my records and I go, oh, I have the first two albums, and apparently I don't. Apparently I only have the first one on vinyl. So I got to do something about that. I was sure that I had Don't Look Back on vinyl, but don't know what happened to it. I really do think that, once I got to this album, because I told you I listened to them backwards. And when I finally got here and I started hearing that even at album number 2, they were sort of repeating themselves, that's when I had that realization of like, oh, so it's sometimes there are these geniuses in their field that can produce one amazing thing, but it's never going to be equaled or topped. And they kind of, like we said with Amanda, they kind of blow their wad, and then the rest of it is like, well, it's not going to live up to that. And so I feel like, I don't fault Tom Schultz for keeping it going, because why would you not? But at the same time, I'm like, I feel like everyone's outlook on them was probably like, oh, there's so much more they have to offer. And in fairness, they didn't have a lot more to offer. But Don't Look Back.
It's kind of like me with the Reverb on 10 by Pearl Jam. Like, I love a lot of Pearl Jam, but there's like this separation where you've got 10 versus No Code, Vitalogy, so-and-so, Watch our Pearl Jam episodes for that low ranking, because we have done Pearl Jam, if you're interested.
We did. Although I don't think we weren't doing videos at that point, so it'll just be looking at album covers on here. Or if you're in the podcast world, then it doesn't matter.
I'm pretty sure as well, I don't know if it's that one or the Cinderella episode, where there's a really relaxing portion where you can hear the rain outside my window.
Oh.
And I think that was a Cinderella episode where it just started pissing down. But yeah. Two bands that have virtually nothing in common.
Yeah. So Yeah, so I just feel like even though it's definitely not as strong as its predecessor, this album, like I said before, it's just a big old fucking 70s rock party, and I'm absolutely here for it.
Yeah.
Even though it's a little, I guess it's a little bit less adventurous, but maybe that's not necessarily needed in the case of what this album is. Because to this album for me, I can't help but kind of in my brain just imagine this album being the soundtrack to like thousands of summertime makeout sessions and keggers and because imagine like the follow up to that Boston album. Every young person had to have gone out and bought this. I mean, I guess you said it didn't sell as much, but I just kind of imagine this being the soundtrack to like some for people of a certain age, like their
backseat action. Yeah.
Or just partying with their buds or cruising or whatever the fuck they were doing. Like this feels like the best album to just like put it on and just have a fucking great time. And sometimes that's music that we need. And I think Don't Look Back is that album. I think it's a fucking great album. Is it anywhere near our number one? I would say no, because we're literally going from an album that I would call a really great and fun album to one of the best rock and roll albums ever made in the history of rock and roll.
Certified hood classic.
Certified freak, 7 days a week.
Wet ass P word. Make that pull-out game weak.
There's some horse in this house.
It's good. It's good. I'm gonna try to get past that. Let's talk about this album that I just called one of the best rock and roll albums in the history of rock and roll. I'll let you go first with our joint number one Boston album, which is called Boston,
which is New Jersey,
from 1976.
Cool. So it's a diamond certified record for a damn good reason. Every single song on here is 70s rock radio staple gold.
Yeah.
I mean, More Than a Feeling alone, I mean, that is a fantastic song. One I'm still not tired of after all these years. Some songs have that replay thing of like, I never need to hear Don't Stop Believing ever again.
Yeah.
This is coming from an 80s rock fan. And like, whenever people bring up songs like Don't Stop Believing, you know, that's very much like the mainstream, no deeper than surface level, greatest hits on the radio knowledge. And then you've got me. I'm so far down the rabbit hole, my hand isn't even on the screen at this point.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I check out this band called Return. They've got a song called Change the Attitude. It's a total anthem. Oh yeah, they're from like Norway or Sweden, and it was pretty good in '88.
But don't stop believing. I you brought it up, so I got to say that my argument with that song has always been that it doesn't go anywhere. There's no chorus.
It keeps going up.
It doesn't know, but if you think about it, it doesn't actually build. It's the same chords over and over again for the entire thing. All they do is add another guitar and some different vocal melodies. But it's like, I don't, it's a good song, but every time I hear it, I go, where's the chorus of the song? Because there's no chorus. There's no, it's like and some songs that's fine, but like that particular one, I'm just like the hype over that song. I'm just like, I don't think it deserves it. I'd rather listen to Separate Ways, way better Journey song in my opinion.
Yeah, like that's the thing. There are Journey songs I fucking love.
Speaking of, just in this new season of Stranger Things, Separate Ways is in that season. Plus, speaking of big ass keyboards,
yeah,
pretty great. When we get to Journey,
killer song, awful video, but I love it nonetheless.
Oh, it's like, so good. It's so good. The fucking just playing the keyboard against the wall kind of thing is like, they clearly were having fun.
Yeah, but it's just the like, there's nothing here.
Oh yeah.
I am literally playing air guitar. You know, it's like fucking, it's hilarious. And there are a few things more 80s than doing that and getting away with it. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Back to
where was
speaking of those, Separate Ways, great song. Nowhere near anything that's on the first Boston album. So let's stop talking about that shit.
Yeah. Right. I'm gonna load up because I want to see the statistics here.
Oh.
The plays on Spotify alone, right? The lowest played song on Boston's debut.
Let me guess. It's Let Me Take You Home Tonight.
Nope.
Oh shit.
It's Something About You. And
okay.
And that is still rapidly approaching 10 million plays. More Than a Feeling is 569,790,653 plays.
Come on, guys. Let's get that up to 1 billion. Let's do it.
Yeah, that deserves 1 billion, man. Holy shit. I mean, personally, I think Smokin' deserves 1 billion. I mean, to be fair,
is that your favorite on the album?
That's my favorite Boston song, dude. It just has such a special place in my heart.
My favorite is Peace of Mind. Peace of Mind is I love it so much, but it's one of those, I love it because it's one of those songs that it has this really big chorus.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'm totally satisfied with this song. And then it gets to that take a look I am like, they literally added another layer of badass. And you're just like, oh fuck. Like how this song was a perfect song and it became like unfuckwithable in its power of 70s rock awesomeness. And so I love it. It's my favorite.
And it's also got that fucking it's got that awesome chord progression that like, and pretty much every 80s rock band did that.
Yeah.
Like, at some point, like on every album. But like, goddamn, like the sound of melodic hard rock was born here.
Yeah.
You know, to my ears. Peace of Mind, like you say, one of 2 tracks on this record to have come to me through a GTA game. This one was on GTA 5. I mean, again, great song. Tom Scholz's guitar tone and harmonies make my ears feel really nice. Foreplay / long time. Kick-ass organ and guitar duel intro leading into yet another great fucking song.
Yeah.
Rock and roll band, just more great fun rock and roll, and it also hits home for musicians. You know, this is a very personal story. You know, barely had enough money to survive, but which is
funny because they weren't actually a band at all, and it's a song about something that wasn't Boston at all at that point. But whatever.
But I mean, they nailed the vibe. That's the thing.
Yeah,
I mean,
they did.
Smokin', like I said, is my personal favorite Boston song, and it appears on the KDST classic rock radio station, GTA San Andreas, like I said earlier. And the organ solo in that has to be one of the coolest things. Definitely my favorite organ ever. Like the only organ moment that remotely rivals the solo in this is that bit at the end of Jizzlobber on Angel Dust.
Oh, I thought you were going to stay in the same vein. I was like, you're going to talk about Highway Star by Deep Purple. That has a pretty fucking badass keyboard solo in it.
I still think the Smokin' solo is cooler. Like, because there's
I would agree. I would agree. But Highway Star, well, Deep Purple's. We got to get to Deep Purple at some point. But that's a fucking undertaking right there.
Yeah, that is going to be a big one. But
like, whenever there's a band that has mocks, I guess we did that with Toto. Like, you know, there's like, it's like Deep Purple Mach 4. I'm like, okay, we got to get into mocks with this band.
Oh, dude, like Hitch a Ride, great song. Love the vibe here. Something About You is a great song. Despite being buried this late in the record, is still insanely catchy. That's the thing. Like, arguably, from statistically, the album's deepest cut. Still a great song. And Let Me Take You Home Tonight is an excellent closer.
The thing that you that you passed over with this album, because like this album to me is perfect, not only in all the songs kicking ass, but the sequencing of it, because for some reason I've always loved Smoking into, is it Hitch a Ride's the name of the song, right? Because that is like a smooth ass, that's like you literally like it's an after sex, you're just hanging out smoking a cigarette or
All right.
and just the vibe of that song is so perfect, but it's just the way that everything plays out with the first two tracks, and then you get the little cool jazzy like interlude with foreplay. I mean, it's and then even the way that it ends with "Let Me Take You Home Tonight," the way that song plays out, and it's almost like a big sing along, kind of like a I don't know what you would call that, but it's just I just think that like everything about this album is so perfect, and I don't know what else I can say about it. It's fucking perfect. It's fucking perfect.
I mean, when it comes to 70s rock, this is among the best records ever. Just not only a classic, but a groundbreaker in its day.
Sure.
I mean, holy shit. The amount of people that came along and were like, damn, that Tom Scholz guy is a fucking great guy. I want in on that Rockman action. And then everybody went out and got one of those Rockman things and ushered in the era of the chorus effect. A time where I would have reigned fucking supreme were I not generationally fucked. But, you know, that's the thing. Like, I've said this before. I'm not one of these whiny people that says, music sucks now, and I was born in the wrong generation. The only thing that bums me out, right? The main thing that does bum me out is I'll turn around and say, yeah, but all my favorite bands are on, like, farewell fucking tours now. I mean, like, you know, there is that thing of, that is kind of a bummer, and you have to let me admit something like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
But it also makes it very clear that, you know, clearly music was better back then. If even you, a much younger person, is like, well, these are the bands that I think are the best, and they're all 30, 40-year-old bands or whatever, you know?
It's weird. I have tried to, like, think, really step back and think lately as to, like, I mean, obviously, video games set in the past are clearly how it happened, mixed with, you know, seeing movies from the time and whatnot, and just loving the vibe of it all. You know, it wasn't until I was about, you know, 14 that I really became self-aware that I realized I much preferred old school stuff to a more modern thing, and that's just the way my ears work, man. I can't change that.
I think we've learned very recently that there's a quality and energy and something about older music that is just better, and people just need to be exposed to it. Because just think about, like, the two of the songs that have been talked about more than anything else over the past handful of weeks, one of them's from both of them are from the 80s. And one of them is, they're both songs that the styles of the songs, I'm talking Kate Bush and Metallica, you take both these songs,
wildly different.
They're also nothing like anything that goes on today that's popular. So there's that part of me that goes, people just need to be exposed to this stuff, and then then it's very clear that it's great. It doesn't hurt that it's in a fantastic television show also, and also used very well, I might add. But
no spoilers, because I still got to catch up. But
I'm not gonna tell you what happened. I'm just talking about songs that are in it.
I know. I'm just on that preliminary thing right now where I'm like, I'm still on season 2. Got to catch up.
Oh, you're doing a lot of catch up here. So don't go on the internet at all. Until you're done.
I'm trying like hell.
But yeah, so it's like, so that's the sort of thing that, like, it makes me feel that maybe justified a little bit in my thoughts on a lot of music, because I go, well, clearly, you know, even if at the end of the day everyone only listens to those two songs and then they go back to listening to, you know, Doja Cat or whatever, it's fine. But just the fact that, like, that stuff is good enough to where if it's brought to young people's attention, it becomes something that they enjoy. And that's great. And I really do think that Boston is one of those albums that all it takes is one of these songs being included in something big that younger people are into. And I think this fucking whole album would blow up. Plus they'd all be like, oh, these are all songs that have been playing in my dad's car when I've been driving around. Anyway, back to Boston, back to this album though, just to wrap it up. So to me, amazing album, the best sounding of all their albums, best energy, best songwriting, perfect album in every way, all killer, no filler. To me, it's just as enjoyable today as it was the first time I heard it, however many years ago. And the fact that this is the kind of album that in many ways hasn't been equaled by anybody, it makes sense why people still love this band, because it is, I wrote down here that this album is 38 minutes of pure 70s rock bliss. Like that is the best way to put the first Boston album. I just think that, I mean, the only gripe that I could ever hear and really listen to is like, sure, maybe it's overplayed. Maybe you hear it way too much because sometimes you can't do anything about it. You can be like, well, don't listen to the radio. Well, but I got to go to the grocery store. Okay, well then, it's like, because they are, some of them, especially More Than a Feeling, is a song that you just hear a lot. But
I'm not bored of it though. That's one of those songs that's immune to me. Although I will say the radio version pisses me off when they cut out some of the solo. Like the solo is my favorite part. Yeah. And when there's like this, where there's this edit that like halves the length of the solo, I'm like, man, you just cucked me with the whole like first half of the song. It's like edging me and never getting there, you know?
Yeah, that's awful. But yeah, our joint number one of this episode, the debut album from Boston, and that was fun. Oh yeah, 3, 2, 1, yeah, we did it.
Hell yeah,
Boston. So that was fun. It's nice to do like a shorter discography, because I think we did 2 in a row of like longer ones, and I'm just like, I like these shorter ones. I think the next one we're doing is going to be kind of short too, so it gives us more room to fuck around.
Have you seen this stress ball? It's a butt.
No, I've never. I know. That's interesting. It's weird. It's weird that it looks like it's wearing a diaper, but okay.
It's actually just wearing a thong.
Oh. I feel less stressed already. All right, guys.
Nice to look at.
That is this episode of Cranked and Ranked for Boston. Thank you for joining us. Those of you who lasted this long, you know who you are. You are the peanut butter platypuses. And we'll be back next week with another discography. Like I said, it'll be a shorter one again, and a pretty fun one in a very different way than Boston is fun. But you have any parting words for the peeps?
Nah, dude. Boston fucking rules, man.
Yeah. Go park the car in Harvard Yard.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Go Boston. You're getting your grinder on my grinder.
All right. Well, before we completely end this in a huge mess, let's get the fuck out of here. Thank you very much for listening and for watching, whichever one you do. And as usual, I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
Cranked!